Peripheral Nervous System. Meaning. The peripheral nervous system (PNS) refers to the network of nerves and ganglia, clusters of nerve cells, outside of the brain and spinal cord. It includes all the nerves that carry sensory information, signals from our senses, to the central nervous system (CNS) and convey motor instruction signals from CNS to the muscles, glands, and organs throughout the body. The PNS can be further subdivided into the somatic and autonomic nervous systems. The somatic nervous system includes the nerves responsible for voluntary movement, such as skeletal muscle movement and sensory perception. The autonomic nervous system, on the other hand, regulates involuntary actions or processes within the body, including heart rate, breathing, digestion, urination, and glandular secretion, among others. The autonomic nervous system has two branches, the sympathetic division that is responsible for the fight or flight response during emergencies, and the parasympathetic division that conserves body resources and maintains normal body functions. Components of the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system (PNS) consists of the following components. 1. Nerves. Nerves are bundles of axons, long, slender projections of nerve cells, that transmit information between the central nervous system (CNS) and various parts of the body. They are categorized into three types: sensory nerves, motor nerves, and mixed nerves that contain both sensory and motor fibers. 2. Ganglia. Ganglia are clusters of nerve cell bodies that are located outside of the CNS. They function to relay information between the sensory and motor nerves. 3. Spinal nerves. Spinal nerves originate from the spinal cord and provide sensory and motor innervation to specific regions of the body. These are mixed nerves that contain both sensory and motor fibers. 4. Cranial nerves. Cranial nerves are 12 pairs of nerves that emerge from the brainstem and provide sensory and motor innervation to the head, neck, and internal organs. 5. Autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is responsible for controlling involuntary body functions such as heart rate, breathing, digestion, and glandular secretion. 6. Enteric nervous system. The enteric nervous system is a specialized division of the autonomic nervous system that controls the digestive system. It has its own network of neurons located in the walls of the gastrointestinal tract. All of these components work together to transmit sensory information to the CNS and command motor functions from the CNS to various parts of the body. Dorsal root. The dorsal root refers to the bundle of sensory fibers that emerge from the dorsal, back, side of the spinal cord and extend outward to various parts of the body, carrying sensory information from the peripheral nervous system (PNS) to the central nervous system (CNS). The dorsal root is also known as the posterior root or sensory root, and it contains ganglia, clusters of nerve cell bodies, called the dorsal root ganglia. These ganglia contain the cell bodies of sensory neurons that receive stimuli from touch, temperature, pain, pressure, and other sensory modalities. Once the sensory information reaches the dorsal root ganglia via the dorsal root, it is relayed to the spinal cord and then to the brain for processing and interpretation. The dorsal root is part of a larger spinal nerve that also contains a ventral root that carries motor fibers from the CNS to the muscles and glands of the body. Together, the dorsal and ventral roots form spinal nerves that enable the CNS to communicate with the PNS and vice versa. Ventral root. The ventral root is the bundle of motor fibers that emerge from the ventral, front, side of the spinal cord and extend outward to various parts of the body, carrying motor commands from the central nervous system (CNS) to the peripheral nervous system (PNS). The ventral root is also known as the anterior root, and it contains the cell bodies of motor neurons. These neurons are responsible for initiating muscle movement, contraction, and glandular secretion in response to commands from the CNS, such as during voluntary movement, reflexes or control of involuntary body functions. Once the motor commands are generated in the CNS, they travel through the ventral root and associated spinal nerve to reach the target organs, muscles or glands. These spinal nerves also contain a dorsal root which carries sensory information from the PNS to the CNS, which allows communication between the CNS and the PNS. Together, the dorsal and ventral roots form the spinal nerve and are involved in sensory and motor function, respectively. The spinal cord and spinal nerves rely on the information provided by these roots to control the movement and functions of the body's various organ systems. Revision questions. 1. Distinguish between a. Ventral and dorsal root. B. Optic, olfactory and auditory nerves. A. Ventral root is a bundle of motor fibers that carry motor commands from the CNS to the PNS, while dorsal root is a bundle of sensory fibers that carry sensory information from the PNS to the CNS. Ventral root exits the spinal cord from the anterior side, while the dorsal root exits from the posterior side. Ventral root contains the cell bodies of motor neurons, while the dorsal root contains the cell bodies of sensory neurons. B. The optic nerve is responsible for transmitting visual information from the retina to the brain for processing. The olfactory nerve is responsible for carrying sensory information related to smell from the nasal cavity to the olfactory bulb in the brain. The auditory nerve is responsible for carrying sound-related sensory information from the inner ear to the brainstem, where the information is processed and interpreted. In summary, ventral root carries motor info, while dorsal root carries sensory info. They exit the spinal cord from opposite sides and contain different neuronal cell bodies. B. Optic is vision-related, olfactory is related to smell, and auditory is related to hearing. 2. State the functions of the following. Autonomic nervous system. B. Somatic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system ANS regulates involuntary functions of the body, such as heart rate, digestion, respiration, and perspiration. It is responsible for maintaining homeostasis by controlling internal organ systems and responding to internal and external stimuli. The ANS is divided into two main branches, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, which work in opposition to one another to maintain balance and respond appropriately to different stimuli. B. The somatic nervous system SNS controls voluntary movement and sensory perception, primarily mediating communication with the external environment. It is responsible for carrying sensory information from the sensory organs, such as the skin, to the CNS and transmitting motor commands from the CNS to skeletal muscles, resulting in fine and gross motor movement. Overall, the somatic nervous system enables us to interact with the world around us and maintain control of our body movements.